A local court on Friday accepted President Yoon Suk-yeol's request to cancel his detention, saying the indictment was filed after the detention period had expired. The president is expected to face his trial free from custody, 51 days after he was arrested over his martial law declaration. National Security Advisor Shin met his U.S. counterpart, Michael Waltz, in Washington on the Allies' coordinated response when dealing with North Korea. Amid a prolonged dispute, the authorities announced it would drop its plan to increase medical school admissions for next year, on condition that protesting students return to school by the end of March. It's March 7th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Min. A local court has ordered the release of President Yoon, saying the detention period had expired prior to his indictment. It also raised doubts about whether the investigation by the Corruption Investigation Office was proper. Our political correspondent Shin has our top story.
President Yoon Suk-yeol, who has been indicted and detained on charges of leading an insurrection through his brief imposition of martial law, is expected to be released from custody for the duration of his criminal trial. This comes after the Seoul Central District Court accepted on Friday Yoon's request to cancel his detention. Earlier last month, Yoon's legal team asked the court to cancel his detention and release the president, arguing that prosecutors indicted him a day after the detention period expired on January 25th, making it illegal. The court clarified that Yoon's January 26th indictment, which extended his detention, occurred hours after the initial detention period had already ended. It pointed to the prosecution's way of calculating the detention period, ruling that the period should be counted in hours, not days. The court said that even if Yoon had been indicted before his detention period expired, there would still be grounds to cancel his detention, citing issues with jurisdiction in the investigation. It agreed with Yoon's argument that the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials should not be investigating his alleged insurrection as it falls outside the office's jurisdiction. The court's ruling came 40 days after prosecutors indicted Yoon under detention on insurrection charges and 15 days after a hearing was held to review Yoon's request to have his detention cancelled. Yoon's legal team welcomed the decision, saying that the rule of law remains alive in the country. It urged the prosecution to immediately direct the president's release. The court's ruling effectively paves the path for President Yoon's release if the prosecution either waives its right of appeal or fails to file it within the prescribed time frame. 신하영, Arirang News.
Following the court's decision to cancel the president's detention, both pro- and anti-impeachment supporters have gathered near the presidential residence, where Yoon may soon return. Our Park Ko-nu is standing by live on site. Ko-nu, what is the atmosphere there like?
Good evening, Chongmin. As you mentioned, I'm standing near the presidential residence in Yongsan-gu District, Central Seoul for hours now. And as you can see behind me, hundreds of supporters of President Yoon are gathered here. And they are here to celebrate and also rally against this impeachment. That comes after they welcomed the Seoul Central District Court's decision earlier today to release Yoon. Their chants of things such as impeachment invalid, we won, and Yoon Suk-yeol return are growing much louder compared to when I first arrived and as the evening progresses. And also, accordingly, more police have been dispatched, more than 1,000 with large buses and fences blocking the roads for safety. Amid the fierce protests going on here, it's still uncertain whether Yoon will be able to return to his residence tonight, as the possibility remains of the prosecutor's office filing an appeal against his release. On the other hand, those supporting Yoon's impeachment have held a press conference nearby, urging the prosecutor's office to appeal the decision to release Yoon. Although the number of these protesters here is relatively small, a bigger group is known to be rallying near Gyeongbokgung Palace this evening.
Now, what's the response from the political figures of both sides?
Yes, so the presidential office initially welcomed this decision by the courts earlier today, and the ruling People Power Party has too, expressing hope that it would serve as a step toward restoring South Korea's constitutional order. They also criticized the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials and urged the Constitutional Court to make fair and impartial rulings based on constitutional values. On the other hand, the Democratic Party of Korea has expressed strong opposition to the court's decision to cancel the detention of what it called the leader of insurrection. They also urged the prosecutor's office to file an appeal immediately and said they expect the office will do so. And they also added that the decision to release Yoon would not affect his impeachment trial going on. So that's all I have for you now. Back to you, Chongmin.
Our Park Go-nu reporting live from near the presidential residence. Thank you. Over in the U.S., South Korea National Security Advisor Shin says Seoul and Washington will hold close consultations prior to any engagement with Pyongyang. Kim Do-yeon reports.
National Security Advisor Shin says the U.S. will consult with South Korea before dealing with North Korea amid concerns over U.S. President Donald Trump speaking directly to Kim Jong-un. This came as Shin met with his U.S. counterpart Michael Waltz for the first time on Thursday in Washington, D.C. local time and discussed the bilateral relationship.
We agreed to closely coordinate in advance on the formulation and implementation of North Korea policy.
In addition, Shin also said the two reaffirmed their commitment to the complete denuclearization of North Korea and the importance of the ROK-US alliance during their first in-person meeting. Meanwhile, Shin's visit follows Trump's address to Congress this week, where Trump claimed that South Korea is putting more tariffs on U.S. goods.
South Korea's average tariff is 4 times higher. Think of that, 4 times higher.
Shin says this was also discussed and worked out between the two sides. He called the situation a, quote, misunderstanding, and it has been resolved.
We provided a thorough explanation of our U.S. implementation tariffs under the Korea-U.S. FTA, and the U.S. side expressed its understanding.
A free trade agreement between the two nations leaves essentially no tariffs on U.S. goods imported into South Korea, is what Shin tried to explain to his U.S. counterpart. Shin also visited the U.S. Congress. He met with the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Roger Wicker, and requested support for Korea's involvement with shipbuilding in the U.S. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The economies around the world are on the lookout for Trump's turbulent trade policy, having suspended his new tariffs once again, this time on most goods from Canada and Mexico, just 2 days after they were put in place. He has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump has granted temporary tariff exemptions for Mexico and Canada on some goods that are covered by an existing trade agreement between the three nations until April 2nd. This partly reverses the 25% tariffs he had imposed just a few days earlier.
It's just a modification short term because I didn't want to hurt the American. It would have hurt the American car companies if I did that.
Thursday's action also comes just a day after Trump decided to grant a 1-month tariff exemption on cars imported from Mexico and Canada. His tariff plans, which went into effect on March 4th, sparked widespread fears about their economic impact. Trump pointed to a failure to deal with the trafficking of drugs, particularly fentanyl, into the U.S. as a reason. A White House official expressed hope that Mexico and Canada will make enough progress on the fentanyl issue so that the matter can be removed from the agenda, allowing the U.S. to move forward with discussions on reciprocal tariffs.
Also, we discussed drugs, and they've been working much harder lately. Do you notice that? On people coming in and drugs, and we've made tremendous progress on both.
Following Thursday's measures, Mexico said it would continue cooperating, including solving drug trafficking issues. And Canadian Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc announced on social media that Canada would pause the second round of retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, worth nearly $90 billion. However, senior officials say Canada's initial retaliatory tariff of 25% on around $20 billion worth of U.S. goods remains in place, which came into effect on Tuesday. Trump's reciprocal tariffs will be implemented on April 2nd for countries that charge import taxes on U.S. goods. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said Mexico should be spared when such reciprocal tariffs come into effect, while the Canadian Prime Minister aims for the full removal of all tariffs. Despite efforts to reduce some tariffs, U.S. stock markets continued their recent decline on Thursday, with investors worried about the quick changes in tariffs and the uncertainty they're causing. 이은희, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy have confirmed that peace talks will resume next week, following twists and turns since last week's disastrous White House meeting. Zelenskyy took to X on Thursday to announce that he will meet with U.S. officials in Saudi Arabia to continue talks on ending the war. U.S. Special Envoy for the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, also told reporters on the same day that the goal is to build the framework for a peace agreement. Korea's current account surplus shrank substantially on month in January amid weaker exports. Moon Hae-ryun covers the latest findings.
South Korea's current account scraped a surplus for the first month of the year due to fewer working days with the national Seoul holiday to celebrate Lunar New Year. According to data released by the Bank of Korea on Friday, the country posted a $2.94 billion current account surplus in January to mark 21 months of the account being in the black. Compared to the month before, however, this is a significant decrease, with the current account logging a more than $12 billion surplus in December. The slowdown comes as a result of 4 fewer working days in January than the year before, as the goods account surplus came to just $2.5 billion. Exports saw a downturn for the first time since September 2023, falling by more than 9% year-on-year. While IT exports such as computers and semiconductors continue to boom, non-IT products such as petroleum products and automobiles saw a decline in exports. Although the central bank expects overall growth in exports throughout the year, with February's export data from the Trade Ministry showing promising signs, uncertainties lie ahead with the Trump administration's new tariff policies.
Conflicts and negotiations between countries are not determined immediately, and it's an ongoing situation, so there are growing uncertainties. The U.S. government's tariff policies are expected to, directly and indirectly, affect our exports alongside the deterioration of the global trade environment. And as discussed in our economic outlook last month, it's clear that it will play a role in slowing exports.
The central bank explains that there could be a negative impact on South Korea's exports if domestic firms respond to increased tariffs, such as the upcoming 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium, by expanding production in the U.S. And with additional U.S. tariffs on China, some of the country's export products could face competition from Chinese goods should Beijing choose to expand its exports to other countries. Imports also dropped by more than 6% as inbound shipments of coal, gas, and crude oil fell. Other than the goods balance, the services balance too recorded a deficit amounting to just over $2 billion, primarily owing to increased overseas travel with the long Seoul holiday. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Over a year ago, the conflict began between the government and the medical circle over a plan to increase the number of medical school seats. Now, the admission quota at medical schools next year will be capped at a little over 3,000 seats if all medical students currently on strike return to campuses. Cho Soo-hyung has this report.
Next year's new enrollment for medical schools in South Korea will be returned to their previous levels. The government announced on Friday that if medical students' leave of absence return by the end of March, there will be no enrollment increase.
If all students return by the end of March, the 2026 enrollment will respect the university president's autonomy based on the Medical School Deans Association's recommendation.
The Ministry of Education clarified that the full return applies to all students except those on leave for unavoidable reasons such as military service, pregnancy, and childcare or illness. It added that the 2026 enrollment would be set at the increased number of 5,058 students if medical students do not return and normal classes are disrupted. The presidents of 40 universities with medical schools submitted the proposal on Thursday, restoring enrollment numbers to the previous levels, and the government accepted it. If the students return, universities will change the 2026 medical school enrollment to 3,058 students. This decision seems to have been made due to a trend where even new students enrolled this year, following last year's example, are taking a leave of absence. In February last year, the government announced plans to increase the 2025 medical school enrollment quota by 2,000. Around 10,000 residents from training hospitals and medical students nationwide walked out to protest the plan. As first-year medical students from last year took a leave of absence, this year's classes, including new students, are expected to reach up to around 7,500. The Education Ministry will review various first-year class models proposed by the Korea Association of Medical Colleges, such as retaking courses, summer and winter sessions, flexibility in the medical licensing exam, and support for universities if needed. It also stated that strict measures will be applied if students do not return despite these efforts. Pocheon, Arirang News.
The accidental fighter jet bombing in Pocheon yesterday has resulted in 29 casualties, with 9 still hospitalized. Following the accident, the Air Force halted flights of all aircraft, except those for essential operations. Acting Defense Minister Kim Sun-ho apologized and pledged help in reconstruction and compensation. He added that a thorough investigation is underway to prevent any recurrence. On Thursday, 2 South Korean jets accidentally dropped 8 bombs during an exercise with U.S. forces. Time now for our arts and culture segment. Our culture correspondent Song Yujin joins us in the studio. Hello, Yujin.
Good evening, Jungmin.
Evening. What do you have for us today?
Well, Jungmin, I think you can also relate to this, but a lot of us, including our viewers, would have grown up flipping through picture books. Now, while they may seem like child's play, a great picture book has the potential to captivate readers of all ages. So for this week, I sat down with 2 visionaries who are doing just that.
If you want to eat a red apple, what would you do? This simple question led to Korea's first top honor in the opera prima category at the Bologna Ragazzi Awards, one of the most prestigious international honors in picture books. Authors Jinju and Lee Ga-hee broke new ground with their book, If You Want to Eat a Red Apple.
It was almost midnight and I was on a Zoom call about my next book. I saw the email and went, wait a minute. Then I just burst out cheering. It was unbelievable.
I had heard of the award before, but didn't realize how big it was. My publisher called asking, aren't you happy? At first, I was just stunned.
Jin, the writer, and Lee, the illustrator, proved to be a match made in heaven, right from their very first book together. The opera prima category recognizes the debut works of either the author or the illustrator. While this is Jin's 3rd book, it's Lee's first. The 2 teamed up after Jin came across Lee's photos of her children on social media. Jigu and Jiho, the apples of her eye, became the main characters of the book.
Their personalities matched the story so well that I wondered if she wrote it with them in mind. I didn't stage every shot, but after hearing the story a few times, they naturally played along.
In the book, the 2 very different siblings share this goal: to taste the first apple from a tree planted by their grandfather. Jigu, the older brother, is observant, taking in everything and everyone around him. Jiho, on the other hand, charges straight ahead once he sets his goal.
I once thought I should just live for me now. But through this book, I realized that caring for others is what makes me, my red apple. For those feeling lost, I hope they remind themselves they're doing just fine. For young readers, I hope they cherish their differences, grow together, and one day share their red apples.
The duo also push boundaries with their creative process, from using photos instead of illustrations to typography.
Film photography has a raw, painterly quality. To keep that analog feel, I cut out shapes by hand, layering them onto the photos to create a storybook-like world. With my design background, I wanted the text and images to blend seamlessly like a poster, so I created fonts as well.
Now, in their brightest spotlight yet, the authors hope to share the light.
I hope us winning this award gives strength and confidence to other emerging authors and illustrators on the same path. To readers, I humbly ask them to take a moment to notice these quieter voices shining like fireflies.
Just as it takes two to tango, a picture book is a dance between words and images. Now working on their second book together, Shin and Lee are set to create another Apple Salute classic.
What a creative duo. Eugene, can you tell us about what's next for them?
Sure. So although the winners of this year's Bologna Ragazzi Awards were announced 2 weeks ago, the awards will be handed out to the award winners later this month at the Bologna Children's Book Fair, which is a really big hub for all the children's books authors and industry insiders. So both authors Shin and Lee will attend the award ceremony and meet with industry insiders once again, and also readers from around the world.
Looks like Korean children's authors are receiving more global recognition. What is the secret behind that?
Well, it's not just these two authors that I spoke to, but back in 2020, we had Baek Hee-na, who became the first Korean author to win the Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award. And then in 2022, we had Lee Soo-ji, who also became the first to win the Hans Christian Andersen Award. So here's what an expert had to say about what makes Korean children's book stand out.
They explore universal themes from a child's perspective. This curiosity-driven storytelling, combined with traditional values like respect for elders and family love, makes them resonate with global readers.
But despite these achievements, however, picture book authors are struggling to sustain their careers as the demand is declining due to fewer children and higher production costs. Thus, it's really important for authors like Shin and Lee to help keep them in the spotlight. And in this sense, I want to mention that 2025 is also being celebrated as Korea's inaugural year of picture books. So hopefully this will encourage more support for the industry.
Our culture correspondent, Song Yoo-jin, thank you.
Thank you.
The daytime temperatures are expected to continue to rise for the time being. From Sunday, warm southwesterly winds will warm up the temperature significantly. Central parts of the country will reach nearly 15 degrees Celsius and close to 20 degrees in southern areas. However, with chilly mornings, please be aware of huge daily temperature gaps when you go outside. While the concentration of ultrafine dust has risen to bad levels in the western regions, caution is necessary. It will be difficult to expect clear skies in some areas even on this weekend as the air remains dusty. Looking at the lows tomorrow, Daegu, Gwangju, and Gyeongju will start off at 3 degrees, has reached 11 degrees all over the country, and it will be even warmer on Sunday. It will rain on Chungcheongnam-do province, the southern regions, and Jeju Island tomorrow. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.